Phenomenal episode for you today here at the Real Estate Crowdfunding Show syndication in the digital age at gowercrowd.com as we dive deep into how to build a website, the mothership for all your content, with the amazing Anthony Tran, Director of Marketing at Beaver Builder. Adam Gower here, and today's show might seem a little esoteric or techie, but trust me, it's not. When I first started out on my own digital marketing journey, I needed a website for my podcast and was determined to figure out how to do everything myself. This included figuring out how to build a website myself. And at first sight, it was an intimidating prospect because I didn't even have the slightest clue where to begin. And somehow I stumbled across this product called Beaver Builder. Now, the school I got my first degree from was the London School of Economics, and it has as its mascot the hard-working beaver. So naturally, I dove in and discovered, as you will learn in today's show, that having access to what is called a page builder to build a website is as simple as using PowerPoint. That there is zero coding required because it's all drag, drop, copy and paste. That there is almost nothing that you can't do with a page builder to create an extraordinary custom website that you can modify and adapt in minutes without the need for any technical knowledge whatsoever as your capital raising efforts grow and evolve. Now, if you want access to detailed training in how to use Beaver Builder, sign up for the whiteboard workshop at the podcast page for today's episode at gowercrowd.com. The Beaver Builder training is not quite ready yet, but in the workshop, you'll learn exactly how your website features in a sophisticated digital marketing strategy so you can raise money online for your real estate projects. And as soon as the full Beaver Builder training is available, I'll be sure to let you know. So for access to that, simply sign up for the whiteboard workshop on the podcast page at gowercrowd.com. Now, it is my great pleasure to introduce you to my guest, Anthony Tran, Director of Marketing at Beaver Builder and a master user of this incredible tool for building custom websites. Anthony, thanks so much for being on the podcast today. You know exactly who my audience is, and I'm just going to, of course, being perfectly prepared, I have got some questions I wanted to ask you. So, you're okay, let's just jump straight in with my first question, which is, why do we need a website? It's a silly question, I know, but a lot of people just, their websites really lack, right? So why do we need a good website?
Well, I mean, in today's day and age, I don't think there's any business out there that doesn't have a website. But to your point, having a website is just simply not enough. Your website should be your online presence, your virtual store, the way you position your offer to your audience. So, it should definitely entail a level of professionalism, be consistent with your branding, and it should also work for you. It should be a tool that you can convert and generate some leads for your business.
So let's think about that for a minute, all right? Let's spin back to the good old days when nobody had a website. What do you suppose is the ancient corollary of what the website is today? What has it replaced that people used to use instead?
Yeah, well, I think one trend that I'm definitely seeing is people usually, whenever I go to conferences these days, they don't bring business cards as much as they used to. I think that's number one. There's so many different other ways to connect and stay connected. Like people will join each other on Facebook, they'll join each other on LinkedIn, or they have a personal brand website where they'll say, hey, come to anthonytran.com or something, and you can connect with me there. So it's definitely a trend that I'm seeing that websites have replaced. The other thing I would say is like brochures, things like people don't say, here, hand out brochures. They just say, hey, check out such and such.com. You can find out more information. I think it's a lot more effective these days. It's a way that they can create interactive media information. So they can have videos, they can have podcasts, they could have screenshots, a lot of different ways to, I guess, sell or present their services.
That's right. And when you think about it, what a brochure did was that it tried to summarize what it was that you had and your persona, right?
Right.
In a single document that you would hope somebody would take away and read. I know what I did with those.
Throw them in the trash.
No, actually, I filed them very carefully, just in case I ever wanted to read them. But I think that's what most people did. So really, a website is an extension of who you are and your business, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
It's very important. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of how to build a website, because that's what we're all about today, isn't it?
Yep.
Anthony, I am an enormous fan of Beaver Builder. When I started, and for my listeners today who've got no idea what I'm talking about, don't worry, we'll get there soon enough. But when I started with digital media about, I don't know, 3-4 years ago, the idea of building a website was utterly anathema to everything that I want. It was just so beyond my consciousness, right? My awareness, what it could be. And then I discovered Beaver Builder and my whole world changed. So let's talk about what it is, but let's take a fairly circuitous path to getting there. First of all, what is WordPress?
So WordPress is a content management system. Basically, there are a lot of different platforms out there that you can use to build a website. For example, there's self-hosted website builders like Wix or Squarespace. WordPress comes in that version too from WordPress.com. But the version that we're talking about today is from WordPress.org. And what that means is it's a CMS system, a content management system that allows you, it's like software, that allows you to build your own private personal website. The benefits of that for you as a business owner is you have complete control over it. You can host your website on any web hosting company. You can build it however you want. You can add ads or sell services however you want. And the reason why I mention that is some website builder platforms, they may have certain restrictions that you cannot do certain ads, you may not be able to do certain things with it. And if you ever stop hosting with them, you either don't have the ability to access your site anymore, or it goes away, or they make it very difficult for you to move it to another platform. So that's why WordPress is so great. And I would say it's being powered over, I lost the latest statistics, but it's probably like 30 or 35% of all internet users now use WordPress. So it's
Right.
definitely a big monster in the website scene.
Okay, so let's just talk about structure for the time being, because it's kind of difficult to understand. And even now, as well as I've been, or competent as I've been at building websites, I still don't quite get the whole infrastructure. But basically, you have hosting, right? So you go and buy a domain name. So that's one thing. You get a domain name doesn't mean you have a website.
Yeah.
Then you have to host that somewhere. So that's
Right.
a different process. That's a server somewhere, right? That
Right.
hosts your domain name. And then where it's hosted, then there's some infrastructure that allows you to build a website on top of that. And
Yeah.
that website it's structured like a database. So there's all your words, all your images, and all the code that goes into that. Is that basically is that correct perspective?
Yeah. I think a great way to, I guess, think of this, if you're used to thinking of brick and mortar businesses, is think of you're building a business on land, right? So the land that you have to pay rent or a mortgage on or something is kind of like your web host, right? You have to pay to be able to have that somewhere. And then you got to have the actual, like you said, infrastructure. So the actual building itself is like WordPress. and then you maybe have to have like a registered name or sign for your business on your building. So that's like your domain. So that's kind of the way I like to conceptually think of it.
Oh, that's
Hopefully it helps.
fantastic. So let me continue that analogy. So could you call WordPress is like the shell of the building,
Yeah,
and that all the fixtures and fittings on the inside and the colors and the way that it looks on the inside is the website itself that you build on top of WordPress?
correct. So it's like you have the infrastructure and then you can decorate your building however you want, just like your website. You could change the color, you can put different information or furniture, like put it all in there and decorate it however you want. So yeah, that's a good way to think of it.
Okay, so then what are the minimum standards for good websites these days in terms of building them?
And what do you mean by that? Sorry.
Well, like, so we're going to move on to the different ways. Well, actually, let's just talk about that. What are the different ways of building a website? So you had mentioned self-hosted. I had actually, on my notes in preparation, Anthony, today, I'd written out of the box / off the shelf, right? So, but you mentioned self-hosted, custom, and page builders, right? Are there any others, and what are the difference between those three?
Well, self-hosted and hosted are really, they're talking about, what type of hosting service that you use.
Okay.
So just to keep on simple terms, and kind of align with what WordPress, you're going to be self-hosted, and let's say you could use services like Bluehost or HostGator, SiteGround, WP Engine. These are all WordPress hosting companies, um, and they, for a small monthly fee, maybe 10 to 20, $30 a month, they will allow you to build your website on their hosting platform, and they save all your information on there. And then using WordPress, you'll be able to create your website, design it. You could use page builders like Beaver Builder that has a drag and drop system. So if you're new to building websites, the old way of doing it is to probably program. And if you're not a WordPress or a web developer, that could be very daunting. So uh, there have been companies that, like Beaver Builder, that's created these, I guess, easier to use platforms where they almost like a person who's not a computer programmer can conceptually and visually build their websites. So you might see these, and for example, you can like click on a picture and then drag it onto your screen and plant it where you want it. You could drag a text box over to a certain area of your website, and you can type in and you can actually see the words show up to place. So uh, it's a big revolution in the WordPress community because there's a lot harder way of the way it used to be done before. So
Right. So let's
that's why we're
talk.
talking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. So the differences between a page builder and a custom coded website. So frankly, why would why would you do a custom coded website today? What is the advantage of doing that
Well,
over a
yeah.
page builder?
Well, I think, if you're an enterprise company or a company that is trying to create a website or a platform that has a lot of unique characteristics, something like a Facebook or something, right? It's a social media platform. They have to have all these different uh, ways of navigating. That would probably be something that's like custom built. But for everyday small business owner um, that's trying to have a website, I would definitely recommend just using a page builder. It's something that it's going to definitely cost you a lot less. Uh, Custom build could cost you tens, thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, depending on how crazy this website's going to be. Or you could pay $100, $200 for a page builder software that will allow you to do what you need to build a website, and it doesn't require all that custom and hiring WordPress developers or web developers to build it for you.
Now, when you do that, you can start, when you build a website, you can start with a theme.
Mhm.
And a theme is like a template that lays out the pages for you.
Yeah.
If you don't want to use a theme, you can use a page builder really from the ground up. You can build a website utterly from the ground up without using a theme. Is that correct?
Correct. So our page builder actually has both. So we do have templates. So if you like a template, you can simply click on the one you like and it automatically populates onto your screen. And then you can change the colors, change the pictures, and it gives you like a good starting framework to work with. And you can manipulate it however you like. Um, but if you have a certain look or a layout that you want to create, the page builder can start with a blank canvas and you can simply, like I said, drag and drop certain modules or rows or however um, features that you need on your website. Yeah,
It is utterly, completely customizable, right? There's
exactly.
nothing that you can't do. So apart from the layers of complexity that are involved building the Facebook website, right?
Mhm.
For the average or even significantly above average small business or real estate sponsor, there is nothing that you cannot really do with a page builder. I'm sorry, nothing that you can do with a custom built website that you cannot do with a page builder. No limitations. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, and there possibly could be limitations if you're really trying to build something that's not out there. But I will say, with the amount of millions of WordPress developers out there that create what they call plugins, they're basically software that you can add on to your WordPress website. They have a lot of different capabilities that you can use instead of using custom things. So, for example, for real estate websites, if you're a real estate um, agent, to build a real estate website on WordPress, sometimes you might need what's called like an IDX, which is
Right.
basically pulls in the MLS data to display on your website. Well, there's companies out there that have created these plugins, these IDX plugins that you can just simply purchase, install, and it will pull the MLS information for you. So that's an example, like in back in the days, maybe that would be something that would require some custom coding from somebody. But
Uh,
nowadays, they've already kind of created that for you and solved that problem.
Right. And so the way that it looks, for those that have not actually done this themselves, the way that it looks is that you go into a WordPress interface. Actually, the way that I describe it to my clients is basically if you can design a PowerPoint presentation, you can use a page builder, basically, right? With all the functionality that you could possibly want, right?
Yeah, it has a fairly similar concept. PowerPoint has all these tools, on your menu or sidebar, and you can, pick if you want to add a shape, you want to add a text box, and you drag that in and you move things around and you type it, you change the colors. It's kind of the same concept. When you using a page builder on the side, there's all these different tools that are available to you, and you can just simply pick and choose what you want to use and drag and drop it in.
How do people typically, Anthony, how do people typically get their websites built today? What's the kind of the usual process for doing that?
I found that there's probably two routes. Some of people like to do it themselves, so they will purchase their theme and page builder or something, and then they'll essentially, create their websites themselves. It's very doable with things like Beaver Builder because, like I said, you have templates and it's drag and drop, and it's very, intuitive in a sense, kind of like using PowerPoint. But then there are some people would prefer to just outsource that and hire maybe a web designer or an agency to build it for them.
So how do you do that? How do you find a good one? I mean, it's actually incredibly difficult,
Is
actually.
it?
Yeah, it is.
uh,
I think it is. I think because it's become so commoditized, and
mhm,
yet there are no standards in a way, right?
mhm.
There's no certificate of excellence or centralized school that offers degrees that you can rely on the integrity or competence of somebody. So
Yeah.
what do you suppose are really good ways of finding somebody to build your website for you?
Yeah, so I mean, in a sense, there are web design certificates and schools, and now there are degrees for that type of stuff in digital marketing. So the education system has definitely caught up. But I would agree during the early years, it was kind of like this wild, wild west where people just kind of learned how to do these things online and through trial and error, and then they were able to become experts in those fields. But nowadays, there's a lot of different website companies or freelance companies like Upwork, um, even Fiverr. You have to kind of depend on the quality because some of the stuff is uh, really affordable, but I always say you get what you pay for type of deal. But I've found that the best way to find reliable services for online marketing is word of mouth or referral. So I usually ask, people that I know, like, and trust, and say, hey, have you, let's say I'm looking for, I don't know, a social media marketing manager. I will often ask my friends who do business online and say, hey, do you have someone who does your social media marketing that you have used and that you trust, had a good experience with? And then I will then, vet out those people, because good chance are they've probably done their trial and error and hired a couple people or agencies and figured out which ones they like best. So if you can get a referral, I always find that I have a better experience that way.
So you have built a few websites in your time. Let me kind of project to an analogy in the real estate industry and ask you a question about what it's like to build a website for somebody. In real estate, you can build a spec home if you're building a home. It's just the analogy. It's not commercial real estate per se. Uh, and you will choose everything. Maybe you finish the color of the paint and allow a buyer to choose that. Maybe a few final things, but basically you select everything. Or you can be hired by somebody to build a house for them, right? And that's a much harder process because typically once you see something during the process of building, homeowners like to change things, right? It's on the fly. So same kind of idea. What are the biggest challenges for you to build a website for a client?
um, well, I'll definitely answer that, but to kind of go with your analogy with the spec homes or the custom, so in the web design industry, there are definitely what we call productized services. So sometimes web designers or web agencies will create or offer kind of like model homes, right? When you go visit a model home, you'll get to see maybe 5 different models, and the person can purchase one model, but then they can slightly customize it, but the framework and everything's going to be the same. The square footage is going to be the same, and the layout of where the bedrooms might be the same. Same idea. You might be able to go to a web person who has certain templates or pre-built frameworks that have a certain layout, and then you can ask them to kind of customize it a little bit. Just like changing the paint, changing the carpet. Same thing with the website. You can change the logo, change the colors, change the font, those type of things. So that's actually kind of a nice middle ground for someone who's looking to building a website, in that sense where maybe they don't want to pay a fully custom design, but they kind of don't want a theme. They kind of want something in the middle. That's something that is like a solution in the middle that kind of offer
I'm
that.
just going to ask you one question because I do have a
Okay.
client in mind, right, as
Okay.
we're going through this, and he
Yeah.
knows who he is as he listens to this, but I'm not going to mention his name. It's very indiscreet. But you said somebody who doesn't want a custom website. What you meant was not custom built. You meant custom designed, right? You can
Yeah.
use
Right.
a
Customer design.
page builder to build a custom site,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? All
Yeah.
right. So then what's the other option then?
Oh, so the other option is to have a completely custom design. So sorry, sometimes I use the words interchangeably. So custom design with someone would say, hey, um, I don't want my website to look like anybody else's. I want it to be unique to my own. In that case, one of the things that we do is we ask a lot of questions on the website questionnaire or onboarding process, like what is your tell me a little bit about your company. Tell me a little about your brand. Do you have certain colors? Do you have logos? Do you have certain fonts? Do you have certain images, professional images you want to use? What
Mm.
type of information? So we gather all of this information, and using a combination of web design best practices, some marketing, conversion optimization best practices, we will create a custom design and then build that design onto your WordPress website using
So,
a page builder. Yeah.
okay, perfect. So in fact, that was my next question,
Yeah.
but put slightly differently. What are the factors that go into having a great website? So you've given two examples, but maybe drill down on them. One was you used the term website best practices. So
Mhm.
give me some examples of website best practices these days, because I presume it does
Yeah.
change.
So a website alone, uh, uh, you need some things to be able to drive traffic to your website, right? So having a nice, pretty website is good if you want to share that to you, and you promote your .com website to people. They can find it. That's great. But if you want people to find your website, like let's say they search something on Google, best real estate broker in Phoenix, Arizona, or something, and you want to be found, well, there are definitely best practices that help your website be ranked on Google.
Okay.
So one of those things, for example, is like speed. We call it speed optimization. It basically means how quickly does your website load. And a good WordPress designer or developer should know best practices when it comes to building your website to make sure that it loads fast. So that's key.
Mm.
And it just, if you're curious what that benchmark is, uh, anything under 2 seconds would be considered a quick page load speed. So if you're waiting for a website and it takes 5, 10, 20 seconds long, then that website needs some help as far as speed is concerned.
And
Um,
is there any difference in that metric between a custom built website, and by that I mean custom coded
mhm.
website, and one that is custom built using a page builder? Will a page builder and its plugins slow that down?
um, that's pretty. There's so many different variables there, right? So um, page builders are meant to be fast loading, so the framework is meant to be fast. But if someone who's building a website adds too many plugins, or they add really big file images, or they load too many videos on one page, these are all factors that could slow down a website. And the same way goes for custom. So whether you use a page builder or custom, um, the designer or developer should be someone who's well versed in speed optimization. So that's something that you can kind of maybe one of the questions that you can ask when you're trying to hire a designer or developer is like, can you tell me, do you do speed optimization on your site? If they do, then great. That's exactly what you're looking for.
Oh, that's an interesting insight. What else might you ask somebody if
Uh,
you're interviewing them to build a website?
yeah. So I would say the second thing, best practice, is they definitely should know how to do mobile optimization. The more and more people are using their phones to do searches online. So it's actually, I can't remember the exact statistics, but there are more searches on the mobile devices than there are on desktop devices, and it's going to continue to go in that direction, I believe. So it's very important that your website looks good on various mobile devices, whether it's your phone, whether it's your tablet, your laptop, or your desktop. They need to be able to resize and adjust depending on the screen. And Google actually ranks websites that are mobile optimized higher than ones that are not.
Yeah, isn't that incredible? So now
Yeah.
you're actually touching again on the concept of search engine optimization and how that intertwines with development of a website, somebody's website. You want to talk about that a little bit? Particularly, I'm interested in knowing about site structure. So you have menus along the top, and then there are different layers. You can think of it like a tree, if you like. So,
Mhm.
what are best practices as far as site structure from that perspective?
Um, Well, the best way to explain it is websites that are niched focus, I'm going to say, um, usually I would say perform better when it comes to search engine results. What I mean by that, I like to think of a website in a sense as like a book, right? So your book should be around a specific topic, a specific genre. So let's say it's a, I don't know, nonfiction book, about a, I don't know, meditation or something. I don't know. Just pick any topic really. And within that, so that's kind of like what your website should be. It should be around a central topic in a niche or vertical. And within your book, you should have different chapters, right? And each chapter is about a different topic within that niche. So that's what I would consider like different pages on your website. Different pages on your website should have maybe talk about different things, or it's kind of like your chapter book. You have a page about your about page, your services page, your contact page. They're very all distinct levels of information. And then if you do like blogging or write specific content like or podcasts, each blog post or podcast or any content really is basically sub information of that particular chapter. So if you had like chapters, then you have different paragraphs, and each paragraph is essentially like your blog post. That's how I kind of like to think of websites in a sense. Like, what is this book about?
Mm.
What are the different chapters in the book, or what are different topics, pages for the website, and then what are the detailed paragraphs or sub information, and those are your blog posts. Does
Now,
that kind of make sense? Does
it
that kind of
absolutely does, actually. And what's
uh,
interesting about that is that you've used the term blog posts. So specifically, those are different, or at least those are seen differently by Google. Now, I have to confess that my website, I couldn't figure out for the life of me how to actually build a post. Not kidding. It was so difficult. And even with the great help that the Beaver Builder team gave me, I still couldn't figure it out. I was used to building pages. But what I do is I attempt to produce at least one new page or blog post, one new page, that's like the technical distinction, a week on my website. In other words, you constantly, you never want to leave it static, build it and then just leave it. Is that correct? I mean, what are best practices once you've got a website up?
yeah, so creating blog posts is definitely a good best practice, because the more often that you're updating your website with new information, you're inviting Google to come back and index more information to just put it on the web. So it's not impossible. You can get ranked for pages um, on static websites, but I would say that it is a good best practice to add blog posts, because you can increase more information that can be found online. So you increase the more visitors that come back to your website.
Right, that's because Google identifies pages separately from blog posts, right?
Um,
Like if I
Typically,
add a new page
mhm,
every week,
yeah.
why is that different from adding a post every week? That's the distinction is between pages and posts and the type of,
Right.
I mean, from a user's perspective, it's the same. It's still, you click on something, there's a page pops up on your screen.
So I think there's a lot of flexibility when it comes to pages and posts. Usually pages are dedicated towards um, information on your website that's always going to be there. Your about page, your contact page, your services page, things that information that maybe doesn't change very often. It's your that describes really important information on your website. Blog posts, on the other hand, can be used for editorial type of information, or opinion-based articles, or um, reviews, or so for a real estate agent, you might even use it for um, case studies of a home that you purchased and maybe you flipped, things like that. You could use it for more, I guess, more timely information. Does that make sense? Like things that would come up, and information could change or evolve through time.
Right, but if you're producing evergreen content,
Mhm.
educational,
Oh, you can do that too.
right,
Yeah.
and you're producing evergreen, educational, evergreen content for prospective investors, right? So you're building a 200 unit apartment building at the corner of Walk and Crosswalk, so not single family homes,
Yeah.
commercial real estate development, and you're educating an audience. Um, is there does Google recognize a page if you put up a page versus that educational content that's never gonna,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
yeah,
Yeah.
differently from a post?
Um, I haven't seen any difference when it comes to getting ranked as far as pages and posts. It's all about how you set up your site, how many backlinks you have, if they're ranking for specific keywords. So I wouldn't say that there's a distinction, but as far as an advantage, as far as getting ranked, but I would say how the information is displayed on your site could also be different. So pages typically are, like I said, uh, usually on your menu navigation bar. There may be specific links within your page, but blog posts, the advantage of blog posts, it can be put into like a feed where every new post is displayed in a certain timeline or
In an
order,
order,
more
isn't it?
recent, correct.
Right.
So someone could subscribe to your blog or RSS feed, and they can get notified every time a new blog post comes out.
Ah,
Whereas a page, it doesn't necessarily have that capability.
you see, this is the thing with Beaver Builder. You have seduced me
What?
into using only pages because of the page module. The post module allows you to select content that is pages. So I have a page
Uh,
that kind of looks like a blog page because every time I add a new article, it pops up at the top and everything else shunts down below it, and
mhm.
it can be dated and etc. etc. So it
Yeah.
functions exactly the same
Oh, okay.
as a
Yeah,
blog,
right. We do
right?
have modules that can filter and display as pages if you give it specific
Yes,
categories. So we do, I guess, give you that flexibility. Other traditional WordPress themes, whatever, are usually more, I guess, confined to that pages versus post module. But Beaver Builder gives you a lot of flexibility
it
to
does.
do
I
that.
know, and we're kind of getting a bit esoteric here for somebody
Okay.
like for somebody online. Sorry, somebody listening, wondering what the heck is he talking about? Basically, it really is just the flexibility that Beaver Builder gives you for building a website. Let's take a look. Let's chat about something that I saw you write about. Actually, it's on your LinkedIn profile, and it jumped out at me, and I'm dying to ask you.
Okay.
What are the most common website mistakes that people make?
Oh, okay. Well, I don't want to get too technical, but for example, something that we kind of talked about is when you start using WordPress, it's very easy to fall in love with all of these different plugins. And just to kind of recap what that is these some are free. They're like free software that other developers create, or some are paid plugins, and you can add as many as you want to your website because different plugins can give you different. You can add sliders or contact forms or um, galleries, wherever. There's a lot of different things that you can add. So it's very easy for someone to add too many, and if you add too many, it could slow down your website. But I will say one thing with the page builder, there are so many modules that are included that you will not likely need a lot of plugins to build your site. Unlike back in the days before I used page builders, I had to install like 40 different plugins in order to get my website to do what I wanted to do. Now, when I use a page builder, I could, maybe limit to just like 10 or 12 plugins because there's already a lot of those functionality that's already included into the page builder.
Okay, so I was actually going to ask you that. So, what is a lot of plugins? And I think you just answered me,
Yeah,
basically.
I would say anything less than 20
Oh,
is
really?
good. So if you have
Wow.
more than 20, if
Okay.
you can kind of trim it down, it would be better. Because what happens is
Yeah.
when you have too much plugins, it could A, slow down your website, B, sometimes certain plugins don't work well with each other, and it could end up breaking your site. So using plugins sparingly is a good best practice.
All right. So now let's move towards wrapping up, Anthony.
Okay.
But a couple of things that I wanted to talk about. First of all, I've got 3 sign-off questions. When we finish, we'll go to those. But before we do that, let's just talk about Beaver Builder specifically. And answer me this. I know it's a bit of a daft question, but when I sat down and started actually a podcast 4 years ago, and thought that I needed a website, it was utterly intimidating to figure anything out. I discovered customer service actually that helped me through it. So I think actually my first website was with GoDaddy, and it may have had Beaver Builder on it already. I can't remember exactly how I came to Beaver Builder. But for somebody sitting out there who's thinking, I am not a developer, I'm not 25 years old, right? I'm an old fella, I'm a real estate developer. There is no way I could ever possibly even imagine building a website for myself. Tell me why they should think differently and think about specifically Beaver Builder and how amazing that tool is.
Well, there are definitely we have over 1 million people who use Beaver Builder from all different ages, from all different walks of life, from all different levels of experience. Some are agency users, some are power users, and some are brand new folks to WordPress. So it's really just a matter of, how much are you willing to kind of dive in, right? So like any new tool, there is going to be a little bit of a learning curve, and you might have to watch some YouTube videos, or you might have to read some blog posts to kind of get the lay of the land or get some of your questions answered. And if you're okay with that, you're going to do just fine. However, if you're a business owner who's very busy, and you got a lot of different things you got to manage, and you're okay with outsourcing and hiring for help, then there's definitely a way to, I guess, get quicker results if you are willing to invest in your business and hire someone.
At a certain level, either way, you've got to decide what your website's going to look like as well. Right. I mean, that's ultimately that's the key thing. You've got to know what it's going to look like. You know what I do? Actually, my favorite way of doing this is to kind of wing it. You just start and then constantly upgrade it and change the wordings and move things around. If you wait until something's perfect, you never get it done, right? Just constant evolving. I find it a really interesting process.
Yes, I have a quote that I like to always say is, progress is better than perfection.
Exactly. Now, and also just to plug you a little bit, am I correct? Correct me if this is an inappropriate question, but you also build websites. So anybody that wanted a world expert in Beaver Builder built website, they could contact you as well. Is that correct?
Right. So before I started Beaver Builder, I actually had a web design agency which used Beaver Builder, and that's why I was so familiar with the product. And I was able to train and teach my wife to basically run the business and build websites using Beaver Builder. And that's how amazing it is because she doesn't come from a design or development background. She was in a completely different industry in commercial real estate, actually.
Oh.
But Beaver Builder was easy enough for her to learn that she was able to pick it up, and now she builds websites for clients. So yeah, definitely, if you do need help, you can reach out to me, and I'll connect you with my wife, and she'll be able to get you squared away.
All right, and I'll make sure that we'll put links on the website on the show notes page. So
okay, thank you.
Can find you. Yeah, we'll definitely put that in there. Anthony, what a pleasure talking to you. Let me ask you 3 sign-off questions, if I may.
Okay, sure.
It's all about the online world. First of all, so my business, as you know, is building digital marketing platforms for real estate developers so they can raise money from investors online. So what do you suppose is the first thing or the most important thing somebody starting out to do that online should keep in mind, particularly, let's say, when it comes to either having or improving on their website?
Well, I mean, they should definitely find experts in their field, someone like yourself, so you kind of have that nice hybrid of experience and knowledge, right? So you come from the real estate background, and then you also have this online digital marketing background. So you can speak both languages and translate that through. So I would definitely say connect, obviously, with, if they're watching your channel, then they're doing the right thing, right? They're reading your information, your tutorials, and your podcast. So definitely connect with someone that's like-minded. So that's definitely number one. Number two is, like you said, sometimes you just gotta jump in and get started. It seems intimidating, but I promise you, just like anything, once you start to, get the ball rolling, things start to make sense, and you're able to do it. I mean, I didn't know this stuff 10 years ago, but I started just like everyone else, picked up a book, picked up a course, and started to get going. And here I am today, you know, uh, as a director of marketing for Beaver Builder. So it's a pretty amazing how the world works, that you can learn literally anything because there's so much information available at your fingertips.
Fantastic. Beautiful answer. Thanks so much. Second question. What's been the hardest lesson you've learned in your online life?
Oh, wow. That's a loaded question. One of the biggest lessons that I learned is trusting and hiring a team to support you. When I first started off as a podcaster, I did everything by myself. I was the podcast guy, I was the editor, I was the marketing guy, I was the accounting person. I was everything and trying to do everything by myself. While that was great because I learned a lot and it forced me to dive into all aspects of my business, but I learned that as one person, you will hit a limit, either physically, mentally, and get burnt out, or skillfully, you might hit a ceiling. Like, I've learned that there's definitely people who are better at other things than I am, because that's maybe my personality, the way I think. For example, um, designer. My wife has an amazing eye for design, right? I may be the technical person. I might understand the technical background of how digital marketing works and websites are built. But I would say if you compared my design versus her design, she'll definitely, knock me out of the park. So knowing what your limitations are, like I said, learning to outsource, build a team, to do things that you're not as good at. And that way you can focus on what you love to do best. Yeah.
And final question. What are your key daily habits that make you successful, again, in your online activity, your personal digital marketing
Yeah.
activity?
Key activities. Well,
Yeah,
I
daily.
will say you have to have a balance, and I hate to break it to you, but it has nothing to do with online marketing. Um, every morning, I start my day with going to the gym. I do visualization. Sometimes I'll do meditation, just getting my mind and body primed and ready to go. I didn't do this in the early days of my business, and I found that I was a lot more stressed and I didn't have clarity. And physically, I got worn out mentally and physically. But since I've established those routines, my morning routines, it's helped me tremendously with my online business.
Anthony, a true pleasure. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you, Adam. Appreciate you having me on the show.
That was Anthony Tran, Director of Marketing at Beaver Builder. I love that product and use it pretty much every day to build amazing pages on my website, to tweak language and images all the time as my thinking evolves and as my business grows. Definitely don't be intimidated about building a website yourself. And if you hire someone, be sure to hire somebody who uses a page builder, so that if ever you want to make edits yourself or pass the baton on to someone else, they can seamlessly pick up where the last person left off without having to figure out how the whole thing was coded, right? That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you, Anthony Tran, Director of Marketing at Beaver Builder, for spending your time with us today. That's all for this episode. I'll see you next time, and for now, this is Dr. Adam Gower signing off.